back. Can you? At the back, can you hear? Yes. Yes? All right. Okay. Thanks, Mark, even if he is from Manchester. Only 13 miles away, but the wrong team. Manchester United, not Bolton Wanderers. Okay, the GUI Wiki World and the Educational Revolution. I think it's a fantastic breakthrough. But basically, I think I want you young people of America to realize that you can't go it alone. The future is not just America doing things for what's good for America by itself. That won't be good enough. It'll be what's good enough for the rest of the world, and that will be good for America. I talked a bit about Gutenberg and the printing press. I consider this guy really, all people around him anyway, and people who invented the printing press to have really been the people, the architects of education. And we're going to see how that applies today. I want to discuss the power of the media. For instance, there's a book or a pamphlet called Common Sense. How many of you know about it? Let me just check. Good. I'm glad it's such a large number. Addressed to the inhabitants of America on the following interesting subjects, okay? The origin and design of government in general, and so on, monarchy and hereditary succession, and thoughts about the present state of American affairs and of the present ability of America, with some miscellaneous reflections. Common Sense. Paine argued that it was time for American colonies to secede from Britain and form an independent nation. The pamphlet was widely distributed and convinced many colonists that it was indeed time to form a new nation. It contained a rational and straightforward argument that they could understand, and arguably was the fuse that led to the creation of the United States of America. Over 500,000 copies were sold to a population of 2.5 million, of which 500,000 were slaves. Unfortunately, Paine could not convince the Americans that they should renounce the biblical institution of human slavery. It was Lincoln who read his words as a young man and decided that had to change. These are great people. In our town of Lewis, where we live, or based 3 months of the year, is an arcade, and there is a painting of Thomas Paine. He was a good guy. Anyway, let's think about Mr. Murdoch. Not a good guy. Here at a meeting that I was at, and here's a picture of me at this meeting up on the great board, I got an email. It said, Mr. Rupert Murdoch, Chairman and Executive Officer of News Corporation, will be participating. Mr. Murdoch would like to organize a small gathering to exchange views with a few eminent scientists. That was half a dozen Nobel Prize winners, and I was one of them. I wrote an email to my close friend and associate, he was 93 then, John Cornforth, a great, great guy. He said, well, ask him this: was it pure greed that caused you to renounce your Australian citizenship? The second question was, did you lose your respect for the truth gradually, or did you never have it? Kappa hated this guy. Kappa's an Australian. He hates the fact that he's an Australian. He then went on to say, our own discipline science is founded on the respect for the truth, so in any case, you have no meeting of minds. Fox in the Schoolhouse, Rupert Murdoch wants to teach your kids. Friday, 23rd September 2011. Next month, Murdoch will make an unusual public appearance in San Francisco, delivering the keynote address at an educational summit hosted by former Florida Governor Jeb Bush, who has lately been crisscrossing the country promoting his own version of education reform. A few days later, they had to pay $4 million to the family of Millie Dowler, and they're going to have to pay a lot more in the future. Well, Jeb Bush has set up a foundation for excellence in education. Our mission is to ignite a movement of reform, state by state, to transform education in the 21st century. Here's the board of directors, and I point out Joel Klein. Gove, UK Minister for Education, singled out Joel Klein for praise. Klein was the US lawyer then running the New York school system. Basically, in 2010, Murdoch hired Klein to launch what he called a revolutionary and profitable education division. Murdoch bought Wireless Generation for $360 million. This is bloody dangerous. Let's read on. Dear Joe, this came in a few days ago. As for man-made CO2 causing high temperatures, data show that the average temperature of the Earth between 900 and 1300 AD was 2 degrees warmer. There were no SUVs then. Greg Gutfield, co-host of 5 on Fox News. This came in again. Union of Concerned Scientists will soon release a snapshot of analysis looking at 2 particularly influential news outlets that frequently mischaracterize the science of climate change, Fox and the Wall Street Journal. This is a brilliant coup. Wall Street Journal now is free in every hotel in the world, from Japan to the USA to Australia. And it's the editorials which have changed. And they're fostering a really right-wing agenda. Mother Jones in 1998, amazing cover. I got this cover. A heartless man in a spineless world. What a fantastic line that is. Look into it, because he is now disseminating some interesting aspects of education. I want to show you one of the dearly beloved writers. 1994.
That's an interesting thing. As a writer, you will know that one of the favourite fantasy plots of a writer is a character told, you've got 3 months to live. Which is what I was told. And you, because you've got every, you know, and I call my cancer, the main one, the pancreas one, I call it Rupert, so I can get close to it, because that man, Murdoch, is the one who, if I had the time, in fact, I've got too much writing to do and I haven't got the energy, but I would shoot the bugger if I could. There is no one person more responsible for the pollution of what was already a fairly polluted press. And the pollution of the British press is an important part of the pollution of British political life.
I'm going to stop it there. It's on YouTube. Dennis Potter died a few months later. He's the writer of some wonderful TV programs. Science for everybody. Well, MC squared. David Bodanis, whom I know, wrote a book. Why did he do it? Biography of the world's most famous equation. From the introduction, a few years ago, I was reading an interview with the actress Cameron Diaz in a movie magazine. Well, there you go, an excuse to show this picture. At the end, the interviewer asked her if there was anything she wanted to know. And she said she'd like to know what E equals MC squared really means. They both laughed. Then Diaz mumbled that she really meant it. And then the interview ended. Do you think she did mean it? One of my friends asked after I read it aloud. I shrugged, but everyone else in the room was adamant. They knew exactly what she intended. They wouldn't mind understanding what the famous equation was too. It got me thinking. Everyone knows that E equals MC squared is really important, but they usually don't know what it means. That's frustrating because the equation is so short that you'd think it was understandable. And so he wrote this book. There's people out there who really want to understand science. So it's science for everybody. Well, these are 2 little boys when they were little. The question I want to pose to you now to think about is, should parents have a right to bring up their children whichever way they wish? Who thinks they should? Put your hand up if you do. Some of you are starting to think about this interesting thing. Should parents have the right to teach their children that their classmates will go to hell because they are not of the same religion, or have no religion? Should the state have rights? Here's an image that brings the question into rather sharp focus. Okay? It's a problem. I'm not sure there's a good answer to it. But it's an interesting one that will permeate through what we're doing today. Northern Ireland, I had this advertisement from Newsweek. I've had it for 30 years. Gerald, if I were Prime Minister of Northern Ireland, this is how I would solve our problems. First, I would split Northern Ireland into 2 parts, and I would put Protestants on one side and Catholics on the other side. David, I would pass a law saying that any Roman Catholic who set foot on the street to start trouble would be shot instantly and without mercy. I would starve them like rats until there wasn't one left in Northern Ireland. Where does that come from? It's got to come from the parents and the community in which they live. Puts this into sharper focus. On the web you can find this.
drain of Topeka, Kansas is the very model of a cute, blonde 7-year-old and just full of energy.
Pick it up and start the countdown.
He, his 6-year-old sister Faith, and I had a ball recently in their backyard.
7, 6.
But some things Bo had to say were astonishing, especially coming from the mouth of a 2nd grader.
I don't think you'll go to heaven. I think you'll go to hell.
Who goes to hell?
Gays, fags, hundreds and hundreds of Jews.
This hate is coming from Bo's family. They belong to the infamous Westboro Baptist Church.
You can watch that on the web if you want to watch it again. Indoctrination. What is going on in these play schools? The madrasas in Pakistan, okay, and Jewish kids today in Israel. What is the difference between these two kids, these sets of kids, and those? They're not born Muslim. They're born into Muslim environments. They're born into Jewish environments. They're born ready to absorb what is in their environment. You must think about that. CNN had this report. The speaker draws his audience. The crowd is inflamed. They rise and shout, "Our blood is ready for sacrifice. Listen, America. Listen, Musharraf. Every Muslim child is going to be an Osama for you." A chilling message, made even more so by the fact that the messenger is an 8-year-old boy. Certainly there's no shortage of young boys in the madrasas throughout the country eager and ready to die for their cause. Quattarilla says he wants to join the jihad and he is not afraid to die. It would be specially safe for me to die in the name of jihad. His desire for jihad has his father's blessing. Apostasy is interesting. Okay.
As Muslims, we have a right to bring up our children in accordance with our beliefs, which have served us over the centuries well. Now, I give you the same right to bring up your children in the way that you want.
The children themselves.
Well, the rights of the children come when they are they're old enough to understand the issues. Until they get to that age, it's the parents' responsibility and duty.
Do you teach them that apostate should be punished?
You may not share that, but that is my religion. That is the way I've been brought up, and I bring that child into this world. I educate him. I give him everything. It's my right to make sure that I bring him, and I take issue with that. You think that it's wicked? Well, that's your point of view. I know that's going to make him a better human being. And what's missing is when you talk about faith, you don't look at what faith teaches. First and foremost, what faith teaches is that, listen, you're a human being, so respect your fellow human beings. And I think that's the important point, that you don't want
an effect on religion as well.
Let me bring in, I will come to you in a moment. Let me bring in Mohammed Muqaddam in response to that. I don't want to misreport, but at Muslim schools...
They're different from boys, where they're not allowed to listen to music, where they're completely segregated, and many such examples like that. I think, in fact, if there is any good morality that comes out of even religious education, it's not because of religion, it's oftentimes despite religion, and it's the result of an enlightenment and a vast social...
Sorry, this is a woman who has actually set up the Association of Ex-Muslims, which is a big problem, and we're going to often see that, what that problem is.
Values was from religion, either from Scripture, and God knows we don't want them to get it from Scripture, I mean just look at Scripture, or from God, being intimidated by God. Anybody who is good things like the golden rule, do as you would be done by, how would you like it if other children did that to you? So why do you do it to them?
So God is not only irrelevant, God is damaging.
I didn't say God was damaging, but I think it's depressing that anybody should suggest that you actually need God in order to be moral. I would hope that our morals come from a better source than that, and that therefore they are genuinely moral, rather than based on outmoded scripture or based on fear.
Professor Lockman said, if a child is born into a family given a certain religion, when that child growing up basically knows more about their religion, and as they grow up, they learn about other religions and choose. And
Are you saying that the fact that you're brought up within a religious faith doesn't prevent you being open-minded or adopting any religion or none?
Not at all. It does not prevent me from being open to other religions. I, in fact, have come to this country and chose to put the veil on. I have come to this country without a veil on.
So not so very wicked is the view.
But what is the penalty for apostasy? What is the penalty for leaving the Muslim faith?
To be honest, I cannot back that point up.
Dr. Mukadam, what is the penalty for apostasy?
And before...
We keep coming down this apostasy. Give us a quick answer on what is the penalty for apostasy.
You very well know, if it's an Islamic country, then the Sharia is very clear. Apostasy is dealt with the death penalty.
Thank you, that's all I want to hear.
But what's the relevance between what happens in an Islamic country and Great Britain? I fail to see the connection.
Okay, I see.
The connection is that there are, at the present time, underground Sharia courts operating in the UK. And they're dealing with marital problems throughout the country. And I set up a meeting with that woman who set up the Association of Ex-Muslims with the Race Relations Board. This is an issue that won't go away very easily. I'm going to finish off with a couple of things from Jefferson. Because religious belief or non-belief is such an important part of every person's life, freedom of religion affects every individual. State churches that use government power to support themselves and force their views on persons of other faiths undermine our civil rights. Erecting a wall of separation between church and state, therefore, is absolutely essential in a free society. I haven't got time to work with Madison, but Madison, let's look at it, because he is the father of the Constitution, according to many people. More than any other, he is responsible for the content and form of the First Amendment, particularly in the memorial and remonstrance of the Commonwealth of Virginia. We, the subscribers, citizens of the said Commonwealth, having taken into serious consideration a bill printed by order of the last session of the General Assembly entitled "A Bill Establishing a Provision for Teachers of Christian Religion," and conceiving that the same, if finally armed with the sanctions of law, will be a dangerous abuse of power, are bound as faithful members of a free state to remonstrate against it, and to declare the reason for which we are all determined we remonstrate against this bill. It's pretty obvious we've got to have our kids educated together. I love this picture so much. These kids from different races brought together by science. Otherwise, we'll get a lot more of the same. I set up Vega, the science channel, some years ago, and I thought I'd just show you a few things from it. Basically, we have Max Perutz, who determined the structure of hemoglobin. We've got 4 fantastic lectures by Richard Feynman, 1.5 hours each, 6 hours of Richard Feynman. We've got that on tape. We have scientific discussions, okay? We pioneered a new concept in TV debate, and that is participants should actually know something. We've got discussion groups, lectures, snapshots, interviews, reflections, science workshops for young children. We deal with big issues. For instance, the embargo on DDT is responsible for an increase by a factor of 10 in the number of children dying in Central Africa. It's the embargo, because malaria incidence has gone up. So it's about 1 million instead of 100,000. So those are the deals. We have interviews with the greatest man I ever knew, Sir Joseph Rotblat, who got the Peace Prize with Pugwash. And there it is.
As you see the skull and the head go transparent, revealing the outside of the brain, perhaps you can get a sentiment of the power of the technique, because now we're visualizing those water molecules that have memory constants characteristic of brain rather than facial muscle tissue. Well, our resident skeptic may say, look, you could do that on the slab in a post-mortem room, but I'd like to hope I can be forgiven for not submitting myself to the inconvenience of that particular experiment.
So those are some of the programs. But I want to go on because things have changed. My colleague John Cormer says it may seem odd that a system of knowledge based on doubt could have been the driving force in constructing modern civilization. Scientists do not believe, they check. And I like this one. I want you to think about this. I am not asking you to believe anything I say on a scientific matter, and I say on any matter. only that there is tested evidence for all of it, and I know the nature of that evidence, and I can make a judgment of its worth. On education, Capper goes on to say, I should like to see a different emphasis put on the teaching of science, an emphasis that would reflect the truth that the sciences are different from nearly all other subjects taught, languages, literature, religion, law, art, music, even mathematics. All are human constructions, and they can be taught on the basis these things are so because man made them so. But the sciences deal with the natural world, which men did not make at all. And the honest way to teach them is these things are probably so because of this and this and this. The student will become a scientist all the faster by doubting the teacher and looking at the evidence. No lesson is learned so well as the one you teach yourself. And for students who will not become scientists, and this is the important one, the habit of asking questions like, who says so? How do they know? What's missing? What are the assumptions? What is the scale? Is it all about the same thing? Do the figures make sense? Will make them more receptive to the message of science for the rest of their lives. A great guy. One of the nice programs I have on Vega, one of my favorites, is one of the greatest...
I told you, and you have to believe that I tell you the truth, that carbon monoxide is the second most abundant molecule in the universe. And yet our theory, our equilibrium theory, says there shouldn't be one molecule in the whole universe. It's that extreme. What does this say? Well, it doesn't say that thermodynamics is wrong. Of course it isn't wrong. That's impossible to be wrong. It says that it's totally inapplicable to the chemistry of the interstellar medium, that everything is dynamical, that in a sense it very much resembles the Earth. If you ask what is the equilibrium status of everything is quiescent, everyone's dead. That's it. And very uninteresting. So we would like something much more dynamic than the thermodynamic equilibrium. And I should say as a testimony, really, every time I mention that to a group of college students, the audience breaks into tremendous applause if thermodynamics is not applicable. And I wonder why. It might well be that it's so poorly taught that they're just delighted that it doesn't work.
I remember we recorded, bow tie was squiffed, and one of my students said, this guy, he could recite the telephone directory and you'd love it. It's Bill Klemper from Harvard, great scientist and a great teacher. The second revolution in education. Well, it started for me with things like this, little workshops. We've done them all over the world. Doesn't matter where it is, kids are just the same. In Japan, the US, Malaysia, Iceland by internet. That was an important one. And across the whole of Australia. And in the UK as well, and with Diego Forlan. And of course, this kid who found no use for C60. But the Iceland one was interesting because that was one of the first ones I did from here, on the internet. I'd have loved to have gone to Iceland, but I was able to do it from here because we had the technology. And here are some photographs as these kids were doing this buckyball workshop, and they sent me these photographs. Fantastic images that we can cross the world using the internet. And you are very lucky, because you live in what I call the GUI wiki world. Well, what is it? Well, if I look at Encyclopedia Britannica, and I find it's not too imaginative, but if I go to Google and put any of those in, what we get are pages and 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 even rotating buckyballs. This is a revolution. Don't waste it. Okay. A triple revolution in accessing, finding, seeking information. You can create the material. You can do it yourself. You can imagine. You can do something about what you're interested in and your imagination. But Wikipedia is fantastic. It's the passion of about 500,000 people. Many have spent their whole lives becoming expert in some particular area to give you altruistically and anonymously their knowledge. And in my field of molecular spectroscopy, it is better and less mistakes than in the textbooks. And I can prove it. And we're setting up now a set of global links. We've got one here at Florida State. We have 3 others in the US, 3 others in the UK, Croatia, Brazil, Japan, and other places. And we're going to talk a little bit about that now. Okay, encyclopedias. How many of you have looked at an encyclopedia this week? How many looked at Google this week? How many went to Wikipedia this week? Ah, right. That's what we were faced with. That's what I was faced with. In fact, I used to have 1 volume of an encyclopedia. Someone gave it to me. It was coup to flow, so I only know everything between coup and flow. I mean, there was nothing else. But I did read this through, and in Thumbs In, I still have it. But all the other 26 volumes I didn't have. So that's the situation. There are problems with the GUI Wiki world. Okay, let me show you one of them. This is, how many of you know Billy Connolly? Well, he's a rather famous British comedian.
I was always shit at mathematics. I was never ever good. And I don't care. I don't give a shit. Algebra was a mystery to me. Connolly, 1A plus 1B. You take the piss, right? You can't count letters, you can only count numbers, silly. Unless, of course, I was absent. The day we did the B times table.
I'm going to stop it there. Because the B times table was something that I was fascinated by, and I showed a bit of it. 2 times 3 is equal to 6, 3 times 2 is equal to 6. But in the quantum world, A times B is not equal to B times A. And that, of course, allowed me to understand spectroscopy. So the B times table is a clue to understanding the universe. He's an ignorant bugger. And he doesn't realize, and he makes fun of it. You can imagine what little Billy must have been like when he was a kid at school. If you were a teacher, you know, in my day, you would have got clocked around the ear, as we say. But it's dangerous, because look at this. There was a meeting in the UK. Many nurses have poor mathematical skills, so they do not know where to put the decimal point. Patients might get 10 times more or 10 times less medication than intended. If you're lucky. If the decimal point was only 1 place out, it could have been 100 or more. It's dangerous. Basically, there were between 45 and 98,000 deaths due to medical errors, and many of them were the calculation mistake. Think about it. And it's getting worse. They don't need to know the cash register is a laser does the job for them. People don't know anything about these things. So when you go into the hospital, just take your test, maths test, and give it to the nurse and check if she knows where to put the decimal point. Because a friend of mine was in hospital, and he was listening to 2 nurses talking, and one said, how many milliliters are there in a microliter? Could be out by 10 to the 6th. That's the situation we face. But there are interesting aspects. And here is the phylogenetic tree, okay? And here, well, it says Victoria's Secret, but it's Darwin's secret, actually. And in fact, I designed a T-shirt. And don't worry, I'm only going to take my shirt off. So here is my T-shirt. And I've redone the tree here. And I've got some bumper stickers. So if people want a bumper sticker, and you promise to put it on your car, we'll set up a secret society. There'll be people like, what is that blue sticker? Okay, so help us to set up the secret society in Tallahassee. They're here at the end, okay. And here you go. That's basically our car. All right. GYWW 2.0 is GeoSet. We set it up here with my colleagues Sam and Steve, they're in the front row here. It's a capture station, and in fact, I come in here, and the PowerPoint goes in this separate window. It'll soon be downloadable. It's the future of broadcasting as far as I'm concerned, okay? And basically, also it's green, because we can go across the world. I shall be going next week by internet to India, okay? So there's a gateway site, geoset.info, and the local FSU site is geoset.fsu.edu. So what are we doing? Well, I started on doing little things for workshops. The world is round or a sphere, and who solved the problem? Take an orange, cut it up, open it up, eat the fruit, flatten it out. Orange peel, map of the world. I didn't know how it came to be until I started to do this whole thing. And it was Mercator. Algebra. Little kids have got no problem with algebra. Take a cube, how many faces? 6. How many corners? 8. How many edges? 12. And then introduce an equation. Faces plus corners minus edges. Kids of 6-year-old can do that. They can learn the 2 major aspects of algebra. Then I set it up really to put those sort of things on the web and get my sort of colleagues to put on little teaching concepts. And then this young lady came.
Hi, I'm Prajna. Well, my full name, as you can see over there, is Prajna Paramita Dhar. I'm from India, and I work for Dr. Thomas Fisher here at Florida State University. And today, I'll talk to you a little about my research and how much I enjoy doing what I am doing. Okay, so the first thing up there you see are cars. If you notice, this is from the motion picture Cars, which was released a year ago, and as you all know, everybody loved to watch those cars move. Look at the audiences there. Everybody loves watching, I think, as far as I can understand, everybody loves watching things move. Here's a picture of an aeroplane. Okay, it doesn't. Here's a picture of an aeroplane, which I love to watch because it somehow brings me closer to home. That's India, which, remember, takes 36 hours just to sit on that plane and go all the way there. Okay, you guys...
I'm going to stop it there because we got some more. She was the start of it all. I hit gold the first time. Kerry, graduate student.
Hi, my name is Kerry Gilmore, and I am a graduate student here at Florida State University. I work for Dr. Al Bugan as an organic chemist. Now, I love organic chemistry because it provides you the opportunity to go through and be an architect, an engineer, a builder. You can go through and we can really look at designing molecules. We can figure out how to actually make these molecules, and then finally, we actually get to go into the lab and actually build these things. Now, the greatest organic chemist by far is nature. Nature can go through and take something as utterly simplistic as these small seeds, and through a series of organic transformations using chemistry that we ourselves use, it's able to go through and transform it into these beautifully complex and beautiful flowers that you can see here. Now, what we do is much the same. We'll take something relatively small, something relatively simplistic, and through a series of transformations, we need to figure out how to make something that's much larger, much more complex.
I'm going to jump off.
Last structure there with the last radical before our reaction finishes, it goes through, and it looks like if we were to add more triple bonds in this case, we could go through and fully zip up these structures. We could go through and take something, instead of just something that's relatively small, and close it up. We can extend that all the way through and form a much longer chain.
Let's go on.
Here are the Beatles. George, John, Ringo, and Paul. We all know their music, and most of us even know of their impact on the world today. However, whether we realize it or not, we've had more contact with another type of beetle, and they have had far more influence on our very lives. And I'm talking about these beetles, the insects. And this presentation will be all about the wonderful world of beetles.
Just jump on.
Mutations on the heads of beetles. And what are they used for? They seem so arbitrary and no one knows what they're for. In actuality, they do know what they're for. These specific examples are for mating and defense of your territory.
We jump on.
Recently, the first case of inbreeding that was scientifically linked to deformities in animals was released. This study was done by John Vuccetti and Ralph Peterson with the School of Environmental Science at Michigan Technology University on a population of wolves, a very close relative of the dog. The study was conducted on a small, isolated wolf population located at Isle Royale National Park in northern Lake Superior, Michigan. The 30 packs are comprised of around 24 wolves, all descended from one female and 1 or 2 males, who crossed an ice bridge from Canada during an unusually cold winter in the 1940s. Since then, they have been isolated on the islands that make up the Isle Royale National Park.
This is an amazing story. These wolves have been trapped for 70 years, and it's a fantastic study in breeding. 1 female and maybe 2 or 3 males. You can't set this up. They've been discovered that ice bridge has never formed again. They've been just trapped on the island. I'm just going to jump on because I want to show you some of the results.
This graph shows the vertebrae defects in relation to the estimated birth date of the wolf. The number of deformities seems to increase significantly during the late 1980s. Vuccetti and Peterson noted that for the last 12 years, every one of the wolves they found dead had some sort of bone deformation. The photograph on the left-hand side is what a normal wolf vertebrae should look like. And this photograph on the right is the defected vertebrae. Again, in this photograph, you can clearly compare and contrast the deformed. I realize that probably not that many people are interested in conservation biology, but where this subject hits home to many is in their puppy dogs. The idea that inbreeding causes deformities in animals is an issue between animal lovers and breeders. Recently, breeding facilities that produce purebred puppies in large quantities, called puppy mills, have been charged with selling unhealthy and defected dogs. Are these dogs unhealthy and defected because of poor quality of living associated with those puppy mills? Or is it because of the complications due to inbreeding?
I'm going to stop it there. So our students are making fantastic programs. I'm going to show you this one.
Welcome to another episode of Secret Science. You're gonna have to excuse me today, I'm kind of in disguise. I had a meeting with Agent X, and he gave me a secret document. Here we go. Top secret. Now, the problem is, he gave me all this information. X, right before he disappeared, gave me these 2 envelopes, A and B. Now, according to him, it contains a secret message. Okay, that's a secret message written in invisible ink. Okay. But luckily, he told me that he wrote the instructions down and put them in envelope B. And unfortunately, that also seems to be written in invisible ink. Never mind though, we can work this out with a bit of chemistry. So, what will you need for today's experiments? Well, firstly, you'll need some kind of heat source. I'll be using a heat gun, which looks somewhat similar to a hairdryer. But anyway, you'll also need some lemons, some baking soda, a glass of water, a paintbrush, a red cabbage, and a knife. Be careful with the knife. Now I hope you're feeling strong, because now you're going to tear that cabbage to pieces. Go on, tear them.
I'll stop it there. Well, we just so happen to have the star of that program here. Steve's here, he's going to take over for a few minutes. We sent this to Tom Cruise and he decided to become a Scientologist. I mean, Mission Impossible. But anyway, there you go. And so Steve, come on.
Okay, so that's an example of one of the videos that we've been producing at FSU. Now I'm going to do a quick demo of the kind of things that we wanted to try and do for those videos. So let me get started. Excuse the title, I couldn't think of anything interesting, but You can tell from my accent that I'm from London. That place just across the pond. Yes, thank you very much. Now, one thing you've got to know about us Londoners is that, of course, yes, we like our tea. It's absolutely fantastic with your toasted tea cakes, crumpets, and bagels, buns, and baguettes. Absolutely fantastic. But the one thing that we really do like to do is queue. We will queue for anything. We'll queue for planes, trains, buses, planes. Hell, given the opportunity, we'll even queue to get into our own house. But one thing that we're really, really, really fond of is our random acts of kindness. For example, you, sir, wearing the red shirt. Come over here. I hope you have health insurance. What's your name, sir? Richard. Congratulations, Richard. That name has just earned you $50 to spend however you like. Take a seat. Now, if you thought that the mark of the British gentleman was the mark of a man with the posh bowler hat and the pressed shirt and tie, you'd be right for most of the time. But unfortunately, during Saturday afternoons, we get down to football, and that's football, the game you play with your foot. Our other pastime is crying. We cry very well, actually, I must say. Sporting events are extremely popular for us, especially when we don't do very well. So the whole stiff upper lip disappears, and we just turn into boiling wrecks of, well, anyway, boiling wrecks. You've got to take the Queen. Unfortunately, we still have quite a few strange laws in effect in the United Kingdom. For example, it is illegal to die in the Houses of Parliament. If you do this on a temporary basis or a permanent basis, I will be sad. I'll be very sad. The people of the United Kingdom and associated territories will be sad, and also the Queen won't be very amused. A pregnant woman can legally relieve herself anywhere she wants. Let's just leave it at that. And also in York, excluding Sundays, it is perfectly legal to shoot a Scotsman or Scotswoman with a bow and arrow. Alison, that's going to you. Okay, so let's get a little bit forward. After I finished my primary education in the United Kingdom, I moved over to the University of Sussex, where I met up with Sir Harold Kroto, and began work looking at the C60 molecule. Now, if you think you've seen the C60 molecule in Hollywood, yes, you probably have. If you remember the film The Core, it was named as unobtainium, and it was used to save the Earth. Fantastic. If you're a science fiction buff, you might remember the reimagination of the Knight Rider series, where it was used as a stress ball for a rather hormonal robot, and also used in Terminator Salvation as a backdrop to Skynet, which will be a big problem if the acts of the Terminator Salvation did come to fruition. It'd be very, very bad for Harry, actually. Actually, it'd be very, very bad for anybody related to Harry, so that includes me. But you may remember C60 being used as part of a Google Doodle back in 2010. So I moved on from there a little bit. I started to work on the elongated structures, the carbon nanotubes. And from there, I tried to cross-link the carbon nanotube materials together, and we published quite a few papers on that. So it's been really successful at Florida State University. Now we can make extremely brittle films, carbon nanotube papers, flexible films, with the concept of using these materials as probably renewable energy materials, so hydrogen sensors, solar cells, and so on from there. And recently as well, we've been writing a couple of book chapters and books based on that. But one thing I've learned from science is that sometimes the answers that you seek may be hidden in plain sight. What I'm trying to say here is that you really do need to be aware of the things that you see and hear. Here's a classic example. We're those scientists that just go round and round and round and round, following everybody else's examples and not coming up with things of our own. But if you want to be a dynamic scientist, if you really want to be out there, you've got to be that person that just focuses in the middle. Just focus on the middle. Focus. Focus on the middle. And all of a sudden, things begin to get a little bit odd. You begin to see things in completely different light. Got it? An audible example of this would be the Wilhelm scream. Is anyone familiar with this? Yes, okay, you know what this then. So, back in 1951, the film Distant Drums was produced. This film would have been consigned to history like quite a few of the other films, except for the fact that partway during the film there are a couple of soldiers wading their way through the Florida Everglades, and one of them had an unfortunate encounter with an alligator. Let's just say it didn't go well for him. And so he let out a scream. It wasn't exactly a manly scream, but it was a scream nonetheless. And so Hollywood, so infused with the sound of that scream, decided to take it on as one of their major screams and incorporate it in a lot of their films. One of the first being the charge at Feather River. Now this scream is typically used every time somebody meets with the business end of an arrow. Okay, that's pretty painful. Or when somebody approaches their vehicle, which just happens to explode in their face, completely getting rid of the oxygen privileges. Or when you decide to take that step closer to nature and your best friend comes up behind you and gives you a rather unfriendly push off the cliff. These things happen. So for your viewing pleasure, and courtesy of YouTube, here are a few clips of the Wilhelm scream.
Wilhelm! Yeah, I'll just fill my pipe.
You better fill it, it's going to be a bad day for you. Capture station technology to record our students, getting basically PowerPoint presentation synced up to a video. Now we established the Global Educational Outreach for Science, Engineering and Technology a couple of years ago, of course established by Kroto, with the premise that we can find the best teachers from around the world to help to teach the world. Now we use our wonderful new studios over in the new chemistry building. So if you ever feel like you want to record a presentation, please feel free to either contact myself, Howard Kroto, and Sam Austin. Now we hope that students can present their work to a much wider audience, and this will help reduce some of the barriers, the fear about going in and actually doing presentations. We also hope that this will help to establish collaborations as well, and it also looks pretty good on your CV. But essentially we're trying to create a free resource of educational material. As you've seen, I've done some of the work with Secret Science. I try to work with the kids, go into schools, get them to ask questions about science, and it's really, really cool because you start them off saying, okay, what scientific question really, really enthuses you? And they just sit there going, I have no idea, I have no idea. But then as soon as one child starts and the rest start, and come up with a whole range of questions, and we take those questions and film really, really nice answers to them. So if this is something you want to get involved in, please let us know as well. We also give out awards as well. Last year, we gave out an award to a group of kids from South Florida who built a Lego robot and interviewed lots of people, and he interviewed Harold Kroto himself, and they did some really fantastic work. So we want to try and award people for this kind of achievement. I'm going to just skip over that. I met quite a few people over at Google headquarters, and we all have the same kind of consensus. Bill Nye, Robert Sawyer, who did the flashboard, and George Chams, who was here a couple of months ago. And we really want to try and push the concept of education for the young. We've also been pretty successful as well, because we've won a couple of awards over the years, and this has really helped us to really promote the ideas and get funding for education for the young. Now I'm going to give away the mic to Dan Striblin and Sam Ruston, who will talk about some of the work that they're involved in the GeoSet projects.
How's it going? My name is Dan Striblin. By the way, I probably am going to have that scream playing through my head for I don't know, the next couple of days. But I do research in computational chemistry over the in molecular biology building. I'm an undergraduate at Florida State, and I've been privileged to do that research since my first year, my second semester at Florida State. I do research in protein dynamics and studying the binding affinities of some integral parts of the immune system, and using computational methods to study those interactions. It was my second semester when I started this research. I had given both a presentation and a poster on the research that I was doing, and I was also taking the class with Dr. Kroto at the time, and I learned about the GeoSet program through that class, and I thought it'd be fantastic to do a presentation with the GeoSet program and try to take what I was doing, because I found and find it particularly just really fascinating. So I tried to find some ways to sort of communicate how cool it was to do that sort of thing. And I thought the GeoSet program would be a great avenue to do that. So I will turn it over to Sam, who is going to talk more about what actually happens. Thank you.
Sure. So like Dan was saying, he registered for a class with Dr. Kroto, and he went through the course, and as a part of their grade, Dr. Kroto had them do presentations of these GeoSet style presentations. And as any course would go, or any class goes, you have kids who will fill the requirement, and then you have kids who will step up and go above and beyond. And Dan was actually one of the guys who decided he was going to go above and beyond and take some of his research that he had been doing at the IMB, intermolecular biology, the Kosher building. That's all I know. And but he wanted to take it a little bit further, and so the technology that we're using at the time wasn't going to meet the requirements that really Dan wanted to do in order to push his presentation. So I just want to take you through a little bit of Dan's presentation here, just about 30 seconds for highlights.
Molecular simulation is a method used to calculate the interactions between atoms and molecules on an atomic level. Here, you can see a section of human DNA with an oxidized guanine nucleotide. My research uses the orthogonal space random walk method of simulation to study the interactions between the enzyme and DNA.
Right, okay, so just from that brief 30 seconds, you can see we do have an audio problem. I'm not sure what that is, but Dan used a little bit more dynamic animations to describe what he was doing more accurately. And all those animations come from his work at the IMB with simulation software. So it's not that those are results of his work. It's not like a cartoon drawing. It's just for the sake of demonstration. When Dan came to me, we had make a few changes to the normal protocol, and I used some different software. We worked back and forth. Most of the presentations, Dan's full presentation, which is available from the GeoSet website, I believe is 6 or 7 minutes. But it took about an hour's worth of work, which doesn't sound like that much, but I mean, as you get going and you're working on things, it took a little bit more work, but the end result paid off a lot more as Dan used it to, as a part of his CV, part of his resume. He used it to apply. He used it as part of his CV when he applied to different scholarships, not necessarily grants. And Dan's doing good. But I mean, Dan did win the Goldwater scholarship. So, and he did put this with that application, so they were able to see Dan and see him give a presentation of his work. And I think that's really important. You can do the greatest work, but if you keep it to yourself and you don't let anyone know, and if you don't communicate that work, one, I mean, how do you know you really know what you think you know, without presenting it, without having it open to critique? The GeoSet program is one way of doing that now. It's a newer methodology, I guess, utilizing video, and Harry's idea of having the person involved with the presentation, just like you'd see at a colloquium or a seminar, brings more of a human aspect, a human touch to it. So, so yeah, I mean that is an example of what we do at the GeoSet program. Is we take a video of you giving your presentation, and we conflate that with your whatever data that you want to present your ideas, and then publish them to the internet, where we can, take it and disseminate it globally. So, anyway, thank you.
Well, you can see I've been pretty lucky to have some fantastic guys to help me with this project, and really could not have been done. In fact, Dave Simpson, I don't know whether he's here, was one of the people who really started us and helped us off. It was tremendous effort. And as you can see, Tom Cruise, move over. We've got someone better than this guy. A sense of humor as well, and not crazy. Okay. It's been a pleasure to work with Sam and Steve and Dan and all the other students as well. Let's hope I can get out of that and just finish off. Okay, we just get out of this and there we go. Right, what have we done? We've put Dan on top of the pile. Because when you write, how many of you have written a resume? Put your hands up, right? How long have you spent on it? Hours, maybe days. Spending about 10 minutes in our studio will be worth about 10 times as much. Basically, you've seen Kerry, we put his URL into his resume. And as far as teachers are concerned, how many of you have seen a pile like that? Anyone who's actually had to mark them? Yeah, you've seen that. Sunday morning, you've left it, and all you want is to get a... But look at, here I am in England, drinking a glass of wine, marking the project, because all the kids in Dan's class, I made them do this. And the interesting thing was, when I put marks on it, enthusiasm went up tremendously. One student came to me and said, I don't know what to do. I can't think of any project. And I said, well, what do you want to do when you leave here? Well, she said, I'm in the military. I said, oh, okay. But, and she said, I want to be a helicopter pilot. I thought, they fall out of the sky. Well, why don't you do something about the physics of helicopters? Immediately, eyes lit out. How can I do that? And what Steve was talking about, first of all, the kids don't know, and then one asks a question, and suddenly the others start to ask questions. It's a chain reaction. Once you see what they can do. And then, what Sam was saying about Dan, he pushed us to move our technology forward. That's what we want. We want creativity to think of new ways of presenting science or anything else, not just the science. We're not just linked to science, we're also linked to the arts. And Heidi Law, I don't know whether she's here, but she did a presentation. She did a beautiful set of short stories on a short story about China. And She did her presentation, and she recently got an award, and she's going to go to great, she's going to be a great writer in the future. So that's assessment. And, well, science is about evidence. Kerry got a Fulbright. Steve put together, as you can see, a beautiful presentation, but one that really showed what GSF can do, and we got a Rich Media Award. Prajna, you've seen. She got 4 tenure track offers. At one place it said, we saw you on the internet, we can see you can teach. We don't have to rely on the reference. We don't have to rely on your CV. We can see you doing it. Brittany, she did a presentation on the Italian National Health Service, which was considered by UNESCO to be the 2nd best in the world, as opposed to the American one, which at the moment doesn't exist.